Days Gone is madness. Pure, unadulterated madness. And I'm not even referring to the post-pandemic setting, where you're either ice cream for freaks or a canvas for cultists who work in the medium of machete. Bend Studios' first PS4 title is madness because it insanely hides what makes it special. For some folks, this game is going to be an almost unbearable slow burn. And I should quantify that statement a little bit. If you rigidly stick to the main plot, it'll take 15 hours, roughly half the entire storyline, before you truly reach the main hook of this game, Horde Tech, the feature that sold Days Gone to millions of players at E3 2016. In layman's terms, a horde is multiple hundreds of infected cannibals, or freakers. These things were promised to fill our screens and pursue us like a sentient tsunami of flesh and teeth. It was a head-turning promise, and a much-needed differentiator for Days Gone. Without it, this reveal would have looked like a standard third-person shooter out to horn in on the post-pandemic shtick that's been more or less perfected by sister studio Naughty Dog. Without hordes, this wouldn't have been mind-blowing.
What do you think now, huh? Somebody shoots back. How do you like that?
Groups of these size absolutely exist in the game as promised, but I had a weird relationship with them. It was an unintentionally distant one. Even on the hardest difficulty, I never felt pushed to do much in the way of XP grinding or to leave the sealed roads threaded throughout this massive sandbox. And it is huge. I think a lot of players will do the same as me because freeform exploration is aggressively discouraged, thanks to a breakable motorcycle that has a fuel tank smaller than your grandpa's bladder. More on this in a little bit. As I slogged through the main path, I kept wondering when I'd be thrown into the deep end with a swarm of triple-digit numbers. By the halfway mark, there'd been maybe, 5 roaming packs of only 40 or so members in them, which weren't the crowd numbers I'd signed up for. Worse, while 2 of these 5 packs were pushing 100 plus members, they were constrained to cutscene purposes only. Firing upon them failed me back to my last checkpoint. It takes until Act 2 of the story missions to see decent hordes sprinkle in organically to the main path, and even then they're only drip-fed. All that being said, my warning to new players would be this. If you bought Days Gone expecting wall-to-wall Murder Orgy the video game, you really need to go out on a limb and hunt for triple-digit hordes in this massive sandbox. There are roughly 40 hordes out there to find, of various sizes, but they're tucked away like hidden collectibles, secreted well off the beaten track. It's quite a shame that Bend Studio didn't decide to thread them more frequently into the main missions, as they're easily the best part of this game. Because it has to be said, outside of the thrills of a horde, you've got an action-adventure game that capably borrows mechanics and concepts from the best, but offers few genuine new ideas of its own. Take the derivative setting and story, for example. You're slipping into the motorcycle boots of Deacon St. John, a badass biker living in a civilization that's crapped out like a bad carburetor. It's a dog-eat-dog world now. Deacon's MC has been whittled down to just him and his pal, Boozer, and though they're tough and capable, this bromance runs afoul of some cultists who sideline the partnership. Basically, for a large portion of the game, you can expect to be a glorified nursemaid for the Booze Man. Your goal is to scrape together enough XP and skills, weapons and scratch to buy 2 tickets out of this place. While you're doing that road trip, you can expect to have flashbacks into the sad love story of Deke and his old lady. Wait, wrong old lady. There we go. Gameplay-wise, you're looking at the same old busy work that some folks adore, and others call a pain in the butt. I'm somewhere in the middle on it. You'll need to studiously open up new regions of your map by being a freelance problem solver for local survivor camps. We're talking hostage rescue missions, materials fetch quests, hunting expeditions, vehicle combat sections, and outpost assaults that support both stealth approaches or the Schwarzenegger approach. Annoyingly, however, the money and progress you'll earn for doing these things will become non-transferable store credit for one of these local camps, instead of just dollar bills in your back pocket. You'll also have to grind for Camp Trust to unlock their best guns, gear, and motorcycle performance parts. Having to start again and again with a series of mini societies can get tedious. There were times when I overinvested in one camp by selling all of my dug up plants and dead enemy trophies, and then not 30 minutes later I'd find a new camp that specialised in sweeter boomsticks and larger engines, but I was too broke for any retail therapy. What I did like about these shanty towns was the slow evolution of their hospitality towards me, and the subplots of some of their denizens proved to be interesting enough for me to just want to come back and return. I happily put in the elbow grease just to see which camp mayor, if any, was as altruistic as advertised, or just a jerk from the Immortan Joe school of leadership. In terms of variety, between these structured mission elements are randomised ambush moments that jack in the box as you're getting your kleptomania and craft on. This sandbox is also overflowing with stuff to pilfer, and you'll feel the need to strip mine this environment of its vegetation, car parts, animal hides, and freaker extremities just to keep Deke flush in sub-weapons and his vehicle functioning. Speaking of, here's the kicker about owning a motorcycle. While it's definitely improvable, the simple fact is that your hog, by default, is slow, handles like a trolley, has all the durability of balsa wood, and it guzzles petrol like Boozer does six-packs. Presumably. I mean, should you wrap yourself around a tree or get too Knievel off a jump, you're going to need to stop and wrench your ride back into a usable state. Also, if you expend a full tank of fuel, because you've ridden all of 100 meters, you'll be reduced to desperately hunting around for a jerry can. Alternatively, you can push your bike to a petrol station, but yeah, there's a good chance somebody is going to be waiting to snipe or stove your head in at the Bowser. So get ready for that. To begin with, I was loving this Mad Max approach to gasoline. Trips required planning, and it puts the fear in you when you're running on fumes and there's this super carnivore gnawing on your muffler. This well-loved post-apocalyptic trope wears out its welcome pretty quick. Yes, you can increase your operational distances by buying larger fuel tanks, but the trips you can do are still laughably short. The mechanic also kind of ruins the so-called fast travel system by turning one long arduous journey into a series of 40-second load screens as you hop from petrol station to petrol station.
Oh boy, this is gonna get old fast.
Even more irritating is that there's some contradictory game logic going on in Days Gone. About 80% of the story missions just simply remove the finite fuel and bike damage. Just like that, like magic, you get a free pass. I think the believability of this world takes a hit by Ben's studio not sticking to its guns. You've just got to have consistency with this sort of thing. And speaking of inconsistency and less than smooth rides, Days Gone is beset by an overwhelming amount of bugs and rough edges. Just about every glitch imaginable stuck its thumb out and hitched a ride with me at some point. I had major progress thwarting incidents that required reloads to previous saves. At least 3 missions wouldn't continue or conclude because a checkpoint or victory condition didn't trigger as intended. I also had half a dozen important cutscenes ruined by the introduction of 5 seconds worth of audio lag. I had to power off my PS4 to solve that one, and it was the same solution when I copped a full system freeze. Twice. Sadly, and though I really wanted to love this game, the news just doesn't improve with the unimpressive enemy AI, I'm afraid. While it's true the gunplay is gratifying and it gels well with a decent but kinda simplistic melee system, your infected enemies will make odd decisions when it comes to self-preservation. They're also insanely short-sighted in broad daylight, even on hard setting, and can be easily lured like lambs to the slaughter into daisy-chained stealth kills. And aesthetically, this is just buggier than a Starship Troopers movie. Weirdly, the engine can handle hundreds of on-screen enemies well enough. However, just basic traversal through the world on your motorbike is plagued by an inconsistent frame rate that's just more horrifying than the on-screen enemies. And you know what? Rather than describe each bug, here's a short reel of some of my favourites. So yeah, at the end of the day, that's gone. Even if this game had been tuned to rock solid stability, I think it'd just be seen as a pretty average experience with only small sparks of greatness in it. Script-wise, this isn't in the same league as something like the recent God of War or The Last of Us. Naughty Dog made me invest in their world and love their characters within the first 15 minutes. Sony Bend barely kept me interested after 15 hours. Some of this is due to just uneven voice acting. Deke is a personable enough hero, but he's prone to mumbling, and there are these weird, overacted moments where it sounds like he's just getting sexual pleasure from the slaughter.
Camp's clear. Now you know how it feels, being on the other end of it, yeah? Yeah.
That, and there's this weird plot swerve in the middle that results in some inauthentic, downright bizarre emotional responses. I can't really say too much about it, but it just made me largely disengage from the main thrust of the story, and I kinda despised one of the main characters after that point. Basically, I think Days Gone is a bipolar game of two halves. The opening has a narrative that's full of promise, but the action isn't especially interesting because the hordes are tucked away, and you just lack the incentive to seek them out and the means to destroy them. The home stretch is the flip side. The plot gets wobbly and barely recovers, but your allies also develop great weapons that actually make you effective against these true, supersized hordes. Pretty much only at that point will you start digging into the map and go looking for the 40-odd random hordes that are dotted right around the edges of the map. If you try to take them on before that, on any decent difficulty, it's just going to be a waste of time, resources, and you've got a death wish. When those moments work, they work really well, and there's so much potential here. But when you're constantly harassed by embarrassing technical issues, what's left is a product that just falls short of continuing Sony's run of amazing open world titles. In its current form, I can't say Days Gone is a must-buy to throw your leg over for a day one kickstart. It's a biker odyssey in need of a serious mechanic. The faint light at the end of the tunnel, I guess, is that Bend's studio has already started with the patches. But if these don't provide major fixes, players are going to be patching out of this MC in no time.